Ciao everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to finally review the Canon EOS R5 as I promised. And this is not going to be the classic review where I list you all the technical specification of the camera. For this purpose there are tons of review yet on YouTube. So I'm simply going to tell you what I like the most of the camera and what I don't like after 3 months of ownership of the camera. So in this review I'm going to tell you my in-depth thoughts about this amazing mirrorless camera from Canon and why, in my opinion, this is the best camera, the absolute best camera for wildlife photography on the market right now. So first of all, this review is divided in 2 parts. In the first part we're going to talk about the pros of the camera. In the second half we're going to talk about the cons, the negative sides of this camera. So starting with the good things, the first one I want to mention is for sure the autofocus. Yeah, I know everyone talks about the autofocus on this new mirrorless camera, both with Sony and Canon, and for a good reason, I must say. Coming from 14 years of DSLR ownership, I shooted only with DSLRs for 14 years. The first day I tried this new mirrorless camera from Canon on the field, I was completely blown away by the incredible performances of this camera. It is able to lock on the eye also of a distant subject and track its movements faster than you can think. It's fast as hell. This camera is incredibly fast. I have to say that probably the times of focus and recompose the shots are definitely over with this camera. It is perfect. No, we're going to talk about some negative side of the autofocus in the second part of the review, as I said before. But what am I saying is that this camera is simply fast in moving, both in moving the AEF motors of the lens and tracking the subject, especially when it manages to lock on it. I'm saying these things after years of ownership of a 1DX camera that at the time was considered the flagship in terms of speed for a DSLR camera in Canon. Now I'm gonna show you some examples of the incredible performances of this autofocus camera. As you can see, there are some blackout frames on the EVF, but this is only because I'm recording the EVF with the Canon app. But trust me that when I was shooting, the EVF was completely blackout free. Okay. The second thing I want to mention is and I think this is the most important for me, is the EF compatibility. I think this is really important and I really want to say thanks to Canon for the work they have done to make it compatible with the EF lenses. Thanks to this, Canon shooters have the possibility to choose between an enormous park of lenses, both on the new market and on the second-hand market. And you may have seen the EF lenses are a lot cheaper than the corresponding RF ones, and in addition you can choose between this enormous park of lenses and a lot of models that they are gonna work perfectly paired with the new mirrorless camera from Canon and with the R5 specifically. And trust me, because I've tried this camera in the worst condition and also with the extenders attached, both 1.4x and the 2x teleconverters. They work perfectly. They work perfectly with the all the EF lenses. I use the 300mm f2.8 and also the 600mm f4 with the 2x teleconverter attached at 1200mm of focal length F8 is very reliable, tracks the birds in flight and the animals in general really well, and I think Canon has done a great job on this side. And this is something that you cannot find on the Sony side. So I think this is a really important thing. And another one times I want to say thanks to Canon, because I have got a lot of EF lenses, expensive EF lenses, so it's really an important thing to me to be able to use these lenses without any kind of problem. The third thing I want to mention is the image quality. There's not much to say about the image quality on this camera, it's simply outstanding. And coming from a 20 megapixel camera like the 1DX Mark II to this one with 45 megapixels, it's really shocking. Now I'm finally able to do big crops on the files and still maintaining a lot of an enormous amount of details. And this is a really game changer when it comes to wildlife photography, because as you know, it's not always possible to get close to the subject or to the animals in general. 90% of the times it's impossible to get really close to the animal, so you have to crop, and the 45 megapixels are really important. And the R5 has got also a 1.6 crop mode on the in camera that can be useful, but sincerely I use the camera with the full frame format. Obviously this brings to also some negative sides, but we're going to talk about these negatives in a few minutes. The ISO performances are great, not as great as the 1DX camera. With the modern technologies and softwares I managed to obtain usable images, also at the incredible 51,200 ISOs, and this is an example. It was almost night, as you can see, 1/25 of a second, and with the 600mm f4 I'm held and 51,200 ISOs. This is an happening wolf that I photographed near Rome. The next point is the IBIS. The in-body stabilization on this camera works really well, also with the EF lenses. In fact, one of the first things that I noticed the first day when I was in the field with the R5 was how much the image was stable in the viewfinder, respect to a DSLR camera. This is for sure the proof that this system is working also with the old lenses. And again, thanks Canon. Even if with the RF lenses it's possible to go even further, reaching the incredible 8 stops of stabilization. The fifth thing I want to mention is the ergonomics, the personalization of the camera and the operating speed in general. One thing that I love of the Canon bodies is the ergonomics of their cameras. The camera feels well on the hands, especially with the battery grip attached, and all the buttons are placed in the right place. The customization are infinite. Each button is customizable according to your needs. And for example, I assigned the normal single point autofocus on the AF on button and the animal AIF on the button beside. Another thing that I really appreciated of this camera is the operating speed in general and the activation time from the sleeping mode. This is important in wildlife photography because often can occur that you're on a vehicle or walking around on the mountains or into the woods with your camera in the hands, and suddenly an animal appears right in front of you, and in this situation also tens of seconds could matter. And well, I've seen some reviewers that were complaining about the speed and the activation time of the camera in certain situations, and I must say this is simply not true. The R5 is really fast as hell, and faster than my old 1DX Mark II on this particular side. I don't know how many amazing shots I missed with the 1DX for the slow responsive speed and in general slow responsive time when it was in the sleeping mode. So also on this side, I think Canon has done a great job with the R5, and I think with the R3 it will be even further. The sixth thing I want to mention is the burst. The EOS R5 can shoot at 20 frames per second, 45 megapixel RAW with AF enabled, and this is simply stunning. I know that on the market there are cameras like the Sony A1 that can go even farther, up to 30 frames per second, but honestly for my usage 20 frames per second are too much yet. Frequently I found so many images in my memory card that I don't even remember taking. At 20 frames per second it seems like you're recording a little video made of 20 row of 45 megapixel image each. Usually a slight press on the button is enough to end up with dozens of shots which take up a lot of space in the memory card, which are quite expensive, I must say. And in general I never experienced problems of the camera cleaning the buffer, except one occasion in which I was with a red kite above my head, and I was pressing continuously on the shooting button, and if I remember well, I was saving the raw images to the SD card, not the CF card. And in this particular occasion I experienced clearly a slowdown on the shooting speed. The buffer was busy, but anyway at the end I managed to obtain the image that I wanted, because the camera didn't freeze and still allowed me to take a few pictures while the buffer was cleaning up. These are some examples. The seventh thing I want to mention is the silent shooting, and in certain situations the silent shooting mode is really a game changer feature, because when you're hidden, for example with the camouflage over and you have the animal close to you, having the possibility to be completely silent is something priceless in wildlife photography. It was simply impossible to me to not be noticed with a noisy DSLR before. So with the silent shooting, instead you can capture each moment, being completely invisible and leaving the animal free to behave naturally without even disturbing it. And this is beautiful. I experienced this feature around my home, where there is plenty of hunters and the animals are really shy. And with animals like wolves, bears, deer and small birds, it works perfectly in the wild, and if you're good enough you can be completely invisible. The eighth thing I want to mention is the flip screen. I really appreciated this feature on the camera. Canon installed a beautiful flip screen which has a very good resolution and color rendering. The images are excellent representation of what you can see on your PC once you download the images. Also the touch screen is very responsive and works amazingly. I found the flip screen very helpful in some situations in which I couldn't lie down on the ground for some reason, and I wanted to shoot the scene from a low perspective. With the flip screen I went through this without any kind of problem. The ninth thing that I want to mention is the EVF. I still prefer the classic viewfinder from the DSLR, that's sure. Anyway, for the standards of the modern mirrorless camera, I have to admit that the EVF on this camera is not bad at all. The vision is comfortable, there aren't clearly visible lags or blackouts, and the image has a nice resolution. If I have to highlight a defect on the EVF side, I should say that I don't like the color balance option that you can select on the EVF menu. They are, in my opinion, too much on the blue side or the red yellow tones. So I think there's still an edge of improvement in which Canon should work to close the gap with the classic viewfinder of the DSLR. The last thing I want to mention is the video capability. The R5 can record videos in 8K or 4K, 120 frames per second or less, and the results are really outstanding. One thing that I really appreciated on the video side is the possibility to have the animal AIF also on the video mode. And thanks to this I managed to obtain and realize a video like this that you're seeing in this moment, with the subject really close and covering all the frame, approaching to me from the front. As you can see, the camera remained in focus on the eye pretty well. So is this camera perfect? Obviously not. After 3 months of ownership, I noticed few problems that I want to discuss with you. The first one, and the first important, I think, is the animal AIF, with animals different from birds. As I said before, the animal AIF is not infallible, it's fast as hell, that's for sure, and it's very reliable. But there are some situations in which it struggles a lot to find the eye, even at closer distances. I'm talking about animals like deers, boars, ungulates in general, and animals like bears. This is because in this particular moment, the software is optimized only for birds and domesticated animals like dogs, cats, etc. In the wilderness, instead, you could experience some problems if you rely only on the animal AIF capabilities. And I'm talking about low light situations, or as I said before, animals like roe deer, because for some reason the camera tends to lock on the butt, on the ass of the animal. Probably because it's white, so tends to lock on this area of contrast. Or animals like the red deer, in which the camera tends to lock on the apex of the horns. Or boars, which having a black fur with black eyes, it's really tricky for the autofocus to find the eye of the animal. Anyway, the camera will lock on the same on the subject, reducing the possibility to lose the shot, and in the right conditions is able to lock on the eye of these animals without any problem. For difficult situations, anyway, you still have the possibility to use the standard single point AF without losing any fraction of a second by pressing the specific button on the camera. I think this is fixable for Canon with a firmware update dedicated to the AF performances, with mammals or other animals different from birds. I really hope that this update will arrive in the near future. The second negative side is for sure the battery life. Canon has developed this new type of battery specifically for the new generation of cameras. Nevertheless, the performances of this battery are not exactly outstanding. Usually, with conservative use, I manage to do approximately about 900 or 1000 shots with a single charger. And for this reason, I strongly suggest the purchase of the battery grip. It works really well, and with 2 batteries, I managed to obtain thousands of shots without any particular problem. The only issue could be the memory card and the memory card capacity, considering the size of 45 megapixel RAW. The third negative side I want to highlight is the fact that on these new cameras there are some bugs, because being completely electronic, mirrorless cameras still have some bugs that you will have to learn to live with if you decide to buy one. And in few occasions I noticed a sort of a stretching effect on the backgrounds of the images, even with the subjects completely static. So I don't think it's a rolling shutter effect, but it's really similar, also with the completely static subject. It's a sort of minor rolling shutter effect. I noticed this problem only using the electronic shutter, and another time, still with the electronic shutter, I experienced a sort of shaking slash flickering of the image in the viewfinder. The images I took during this shaking and flickering were completely blurry and out of focus. I don't have an explanation for this. I hope you can add on the comment below the video. And in another occasion I experienced the most horrible of the bugs, because I was in the wild with a beautiful wolf in front of me, and I started to take some few pictures, but suddenly the EVF turned into black. The camera was completely blocked and freeze, and I couldn't do anything. In the meanwhile, the wolf ran away, so I decided to review the images, the few shots taken, trying to understand what happened. But unfortunately, not a single shot has been saved in the memory card slot. So I lost the shots completely, forever, and I was out of me for the anger at the time. Fortunately, I never experienced a second time this issue in the later months, but I really hope that Canon will fix these bugs with a newer and updated version of this firmware. For the last negative point, I would say the price. But anyway, after seeing the price point of the main competitors like the Sony A1 and the Sony A7R IV, the main rivals of this R5, I have to admit that the price for the R5 is on point. They are a lot of money for sure, it's clear, but looking to the competitors, I repeat, the starting price, I think it's correct. So we are at the final considerations. As you have seen, this camera has a lot of pros and some minor cons to deal with. For sure it's not perfect, but why have I said it's the best choice on the market right now? Basically for two reasons. The first one, that is a really well-rounded camera. It does everything you can imagine beautifully. It's all available in one single body. It's similarly to the A1, but this point brings us to the second aspect that is important, and is the price, because the performances are very similar to the A1, but this R5 costs thousands of euros less than the A1. And if I have to choose a single word to describe the R5, I would say balance. It's a perfect balance of performances, price, and all you can imagine. So it's as I said before, it's a well-rounded camera, does everything perfectly, and I strongly suggest the purchase of this new Canon EOS R5. It's really an outstanding camera, and it's perfect for wildlife photography and at the correct price. So thanks for watching this video, and if you like the content, please leave a comment and a like, because you can help me to grow my channel. And if you want to see more contents, please follow me also on my Instagram account and Facebook. You can find me as Federico Pelliccia Pure Wildlife on the Instagram, and as Federico Pelliccia Photography on Facebook. So really thanks for watching, and see you soon in the next video. Bye.